This really looks like the set of the saddest cooking show ever made. It's like basically one shot. Shit, the lid doesn't close. Cheers. Needs more sugar.
Write drunk, edit sober. Apparently Ernest Hemingway never actually said those famous words that were attributed to him. That's actually not that bad. After doing research for this video, I learned that a lot of what I knew about Ernest Hemingway isn't true. Which, to be fair, is pretty much just that he said write drunk, edit sober. Oh, also I thought that his favorite drink, as you can see here, was mojitos. Nope, apparently that was just some lie made up by some bar in Mexico trying to get people to buy mojitos. I'm not mentioning the name of that bar because you don't get credit for lying on this show. Oh, which by the way, I totally forgot, my name is Patrick Nile and this is my new show, Writing and Drinking Like Famous Authors. Today I will apparently not be drinking like Ernest Hemingway, which is honestly a good thing because it turns out he had a lot more of an alcohol problem than I thought he did. In this series of videos, I'll basically be drinking a famous author's favorite drink while I talk about their lives, and then I'll go into reading some of their work and then trying to write like them. I really wanted to start this series with an upbeat tone, and this really will be an upbeat series. That being said, picking the right author to cover for the first episode of this series was really difficult. I love mojitos, by the way. They might not have been Ernest Hemingway's favorite drink, but they should have been. Anyway, since this is the first episode of this series, I want you to know that I really hesitated on whether or not I should make this series. At first, I came up with this idea, and I was really excited because I thought it'd be a really fun video series to make. And yeah, I'm already having a blast with this. The first mojito is already gone. But the reason I really hesitated to make these videos is I understand that a lot of these authors really suffer with alcoholism. In fact, for many of them, it ruined their lives. And the original reason I picked Ernest Hemingway, other than the fact that I thought his favorite drink was mojitos, and that's my favorite drink, was I thought that Ernest Hemingway had a really positive life and a better relationship with alcohol. Like, I knew he suffered with alcoholism, but I didn't really understand the extent of it. I knew Ernest Hemingway as a man's man, a bro, and I really didn't think too much of it. So yeah, when I first did my research on Ernest Hemingway's life, I was like, oh shit, this is not really what I was going for. I almost stopped doing my research on him right there and picked another author because I wanted my first episode of the series to be upbeat. And I'm really glad I didn't, because after looking more into Ernest Hemingway's life, I realized he is the perfect author to start this series with. I think now is the perfect time for me to say drink responsibly. Alcohol in moderation is fun, or at least I think it's fun. That's why I'm doing this series. That being said, it's not for everyone. If you have a problem, please seek help. Also, as a note on this series, I will not be trying to outdrink the authors I feature on this series. I would probably drink myself to death if I did that. That's unfortunately what a lot of them did, to be honest. I'm just going to be drinking their favorite drinks, or what I thought were their favorite drinks. For the record, right after talking about drinking responsibly, I did pour myself a second mojito for the TikTok version of this video. A lot of creators just cut up their footage and make different versions of their videos for different platforms. I'm not good enough of a creator to do that. At least not yet. Let's get into the life of Ernest Miller Hemingway. Just so you know, trigger warning, this shotgun does come into play for the end of the story. Does that make it like a Chekhov's gun? Because it is relevant throughout the story. For the record, I'm doing this at 4 a.m. Life goals. Ernest Hemingway was born in 1989 and he had a really tough family life. From what I read, it seemed like his mother always wanted him to be a girl and dressed him like a girl, but then also complimented him for his manly traits. He seemed to hate his mother from a very young age. Which, I hate to say this, but if my mom made me go to school dressed as a girl, I would probably hate her too. His relationship with his father did not seem to be much better. His father would hit him and do other pretty messed up things, but he seemed to be fond of his father, at least in points of his life. Kill a leaf. I like the leaves being in the mojito, but sometimes I accidentally drink them. Very good though, a little strong, but it's good. Hemingway's relationship with his father was so complicated that he actually talks about on certain occasions pointing a gun at his father from a distance. Yeah, I know, that's really messed up. Sometimes real life is crazier than fiction. Probably as a result of his rough home life, Hemingway ended up running away from home multiple times. It is getting harder to speak already. I probably should have drank less before the history part. Hemingway from a young age was always fond of outdoor life. You know, hunting, that type of manly stuff, which would really confuse him because his mother would support that, but then also want him to dress like a girl. Yeah, I'm not going to speculate on mental disorders when I don't really know these people and I'm just reading about them, but it seems like a lot was going on in this household. I don't know, I feel kind of uncomfortable when people try to diagnose people with things when they've already passed away. Although I guess that could be helpful when you're looking back in history to kind of make stuff they said make sense. I don't know. Ernest Hemingway's father was also really critical of his own son's writing. Which, to be honest, is kind of crazy because Ernest Hemingway was one of those authors who caught on really quickly. You know, back then it took a long time for a lot of authors to get discovered, but Ernest Hemingway got discovered pretty young. It's like he had this natural gift, so the fact that his father was still so critical is kind of insane. I would say I really wish I had this natural gift for writing, but it seems like all these authors that have this gift also seem to have these really terrible lives, so I'm just glad I don't really have that. Anyway, when World War I came along, Ernest Hemingway really wanted to participate, but because he had a bad eye, they didn't let him. Instead, he drove an ambulance for the Red Cross, and he was wounded doing so. While saving someone's life, he ended up getting 200 fragments of shrapnel in his leg and his abdomen. Which, just the idea of surviving that, especially back then with less advanced medical technology, is insane. The pain he endured must have been immense because he was in the hospital for 6 months. This is getting a little off topic, but it just reminds me of high school. We learned about St. Ignatius Loyola and how he got shot in the leg, and basically they had to break it 2 or 3 times to get it reset, and he was in the hospital for years, and I just can't imagine what your mind goes through being in a bed for that long. It's not like today where you have a somewhat well-attended bed and you can watch TV and kind of keep track of what's going on your phone. You'd be stuck in that bed for such a long time, and all you can really do is read and write. I genuinely don't even want to imagine what that's like. Anyway, during that hospital stay, he ended up meeting his wife, so I would say it was worth it, but he ended up getting married again like 3 more times, so I don't really know how that went. I mean, they got married though, so they had to be happy at some point. After the war, that's when I believe his writing career truly began, and I think he was the happiest writing early on in his life. His first book was called 3 Stories and 10 Poems, and while I haven't read it, people have said the poems were meh, but the short stories instantly showed a ton of potential. After releasing this book, everyone kind of knew that Hemingway was going to be a superstar as an author, and he was. Now, at some point in his life, Ernest Hemingway's father would end up taking his own life, and that would deeply affect Ernest Hemingway. Not to spoil anything, but after that happened, a lot of the characters in Ernest Hemingway's books would not live to see the end of the books. Some also believe when Ernest Hemingway's father took his own life, Ernest Hemingway's own fate was kind of sealed. World War II broke out, and during that time, Ernest Hemingway did not do a lot of writing. I really couldn't find out to what capacity he was serving. My research was somewhat limited, but if you know, please let me know in the comments below. Or also let me know if I get anything wrong or I miss any crazy details. I wanted to do as much research on his life as I possibly could, but I also really want to focus on his writing style and also picking out stories I could read so I can kind of try to write like him. Trust me, this is just meant to be a brief overview. If you want to know more about Ernest Hemingway's life, there are a lot of better videos out there that you can check out after this. I have to read and write after I film this. In 1954, Ernest Hemingway won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is kind of crazy. Also, I really did not know that there was a Nobel Prize in Literature. I thought there was just one Nobel Prize. But I think it makes sense that there are different Nobel Prizes for different areas now that I think about it. I just didn't know that. Am I dumb for not knowing that? I mean, before drinking for this video, so when I was sober, I actually read Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway, and I had no idea what was going on until I actually looked on SparkNotes, and I was like, oh, that's what this is about. I think I might be dumb. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all the great works he's created throughout the years. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the works and when he created them when I actually do the reading section of this video. Rather, I'm going to focus on, rather than just the mental struggles that he suffered through both his upbringing and also probably his genetics, he suffered a lot of physical injuries throughout his life. Like, a lot of physical injuries. Ernest Hemingway was a manly man. He liked to live life on the edge. I mean, he was a bullfighting enthusiast, and I feel like you have to be a certain type of crazy, manly man to be into bullfighting. Although I will say, the other day I fell asleep downstairs, and when I woke up, the bull riding stuff was on, and it was actually kind of interesting. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that Ernest Hemingway liked to live life on the edge. Obviously, considering that he's featured on this series, he liked to drink. That's probably one of the reasons he was considered to be accident-prone, although a lot of the accidents he got into were completely out of his control. At one point, he pulled a ceiling panel down his head thinking it was the cord to flush the toilet. Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing. I don't know what flush mechanisms looked like back then, but I feel like that's a pretty blaring error. That, on top of giving him a major scar on his head, also gave him a concussion. He was also in a car crash as a passenger where he went through a windshield. How do you not die after that? Obviously, being thrown out of a windshield of a car, he got another concussion. Later on, he got thrown off a motorcycle and again suffered a concussion. He also had dangerous encounters with animals in Africa because he liked to go hunt. These are all reasons why he was seen as such a manly man. I mean, especially back then, what was seen as more manly than hunting lions and stuff? Apparently, though, the hunting that he did in Africa was nowhere near as dangerous as getting there, because at one point he got into a plane crash, and then he got into another plane crash 24 hours later. 2 plane crashes in a 24-hour span. The first plane crash was minor considering it was a plane crash, but the second one he suffered a serious brain injury. And what I'm really hinting at here is Hemingway really suffered a lot of trauma to the brain. We know today just how dangerous concussions and brain injuries really are. Even a minor concussion can have major implications down the road. I feel like many people think of Hemingway as this badass author, and in many ways he was. I mean, just look at his life story, look at all he did, look at all he survived. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about what he suffered through and how it affected him mentally. Hemingway wanted to be seen as this tough, masculine figure, and on the outside he was. But he also suffered heavily with his mental health, and he used alcohol to really cope with that. It's noted that after World War I, he was afraid to sleep alone and afraid of the dark. It's clear from an early age that he suffered from depression, but his depression definitely got worse as life went on and he suffered more brain injuries. Throughout his life, it would seem that he would always seek help for physical ailments, but not the mental ones. A lot of his letters after his father's death also seem to hint at how his own life would end. In the last years of Hemingway's life, his physical condition seriously declined. His mental condition also declined to the point where he felt like he could no longer write. Eventually, he sought help and was given electroshock therapy, which is just awful to think about. I mean, I know they didn't know better, but to think that would just shock people is just so unsettling to me. As you can imagine, the first rounds of electroshock therapy did not work. Hemingway returned home and eventually... Ow, that really hurt. You get the idea. Looking back, Hemingway really isn't the hero I thought he was when I didn't know that much about him. In fact, he's much more like one of the complex characters he would create in one of his stories. Looking from the outside, he was a man's man. He was an inspiration to men who want to write books. Although now that I think of it, I feel like a lot of authors were men back then. I feel like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm a minority or anything, but I feel like most authors are female now, right? I'm actually not sure. Getting off topic, I kind of want to look that up later because I know most of my followers on Instagram are female, so I assume that most authors are female, but I'm not really sure. But my point is, when I didn't really know anything about Ernest Hemingway, I was like, yeah, I want to be just like this guy. I figured he had the perfect life. Yeah, I don't want to go around shooting animals, but I figured, yeah, he wrote books and drank booze. What else could you ask for? I mean, he had a boat, everyone seemed to love him. I realize now that he really was a complex character. Sure, you could still see him as a man's man, but you could also see him as a huge womanizer. I mean, the guy cheated on like 3 of his wives. But to be honest, I kind of sympathize him as a man who suffered in silence at a time where it really wasn't that appropriate to talk about men's health. But to be honest, I kind of sympathize with him as a man who suffered with mental health issues in a time where it really wasn't that appropriate for men to talk about their mental health issues. And as a society, I can honestly say we've come a long way with that issue, but I don't think we've come far enough. Also, I completely left out from my notes, at the end of his life, he was convinced that the FBI was after him, and his wife thought he was completely crazy. His last wife, at least. He had 4 wives. Like, the last wife, she was like, yeah, you're crazy. Everyone thought he was crazy. It turns out the FBI actually had an extensive file on Ernest Hemingway. When I do, unfortunately, inevitably die, if the FBI does not have 10 pages on me, I did something wrong in my life. Oh, I missed. Let's go read some of Hemingway's... Oh my god. Let's go read some of Hemingway's stories. I think I'm pouring these mojitos a bit too strong. That being said, before I get reading, let's try pineapple. Okay, I will admit, compared to the other 2 I made before, the pineapple one kind of is a monstrosity, but... let me tell you, it is so good. I don't really know how much I poured in this one, probably too much. I really wasn't measuring for any of them, but this is incredible. It's also 5:06 in the morning. I probably should have done this earlier in the day, but too late. Cheers. Quick aside, and I don't mean this in an offensive way in any way, I think you can like whatever drink you like. I just think it's kind of strange that Ernest Hemingway wants to be seen as such a masculine guy, and then he also loved daiquiris. I just feel like he would say he liked bourbon or something, I don't know. Like, personally, like, I think that's totally cool. I've actually been made fun of for it in the past. I'm actually not really a big beer guy. I prefer seltzers or mixed drinks or just straight shots. I don't like beer, but you know... it's just kind of strange that he tried to portray himself in such a macho way, and then he was just like, I love daiquiris. Daiquiris are awesome, though. I might have to remake this video drinking daiquiris in the future. I mean, to be fair, if this series does take off, I feel like Ernest Hemingway had such an interesting life that I could really cover it in so much more detail than I did in this first video. He also wrote so much, including stuff that was published after his death, that I could just cover different stories the second time. But let me know in the comments if you like the series. I'm really curious to see what the feedback's gonna be on this one. And if you do like it, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and let me know what author you want to see me cover next in this series. I'm thinking Edgar Allan Poe for the next episode, but he does like a weird drink, so I'm kind of saving it for like a Christmas episode. So if you have another author that you think would work really well, I would love to check it out. I really hope this series does well, because I'm having a lot of fun with this so far. Bah. Leaf. Wouldn't you like some more broth? The woman asked him now. No, thank you very much. It's awfully good. Just try a little. I would like a whiskey soda. It's not good for you. You know what? I would also like whiskey soda. Or another mojito. The one thing that I find pretty hilarious is I am so bad at reading out loud. Like when I try to read my own stories out loud, I struggle so many times, but I was able to just get that entire thing with one take. Maybe the next time I try to read out loud, I should just drink a couple of these first. In all seriousness, a year ago when I first tried to explore Hemingway's work, I really didn't understand what I was looking at. This time I can truly see just how good of a writer he is. Yeah, all I can really say is wow. Wow. I'm gonna make another one now.
Now that I think of it, I feel like this might violate my mom's no food in the bedroom rule, but oh well.
I genuinely feel like I'm on vacation. That's delicious. So back when I read Hills Like White Elephants, I had no idea what Hemingway was talking about. Like I read the story and I was completely confused, and I really felt like an idiot when I read it because I just did not understand what was going on at all. However, reading the Snows of Kilimanjaro, I really understand his style. From the two stories that I've read at least, Hemingway does not wait for you as a reader, he just goes and tells the story. However, unlike Hills Like White Elephants, I understood what this story was about right away. Even during the bits where I felt a bit confused, and even though I have drank a bit during this video, I will say some of the story is confusing, but that being said, I understood what this story was about. As a writer, how could I not understand what the Snows of Kilimanjaro were about? It's our greatest fear as writers, or at least it's my greatest fear as a writer. I understood that right away. Without giving too much away, although Hemingway has been dead for a long time, in case you want to read it for yourself, this story is basically about a writer dying and realizing they have not really written what they want to write yet. Basically, the main character's death is all but imminent, and there's no chance they can tell all the stories that they actually want to tell. As they lie dying, they realize their life has not really been the life that they wanted to live, and also they feel like they have not reached enough into their own life experiences in their own fictional works. One of my greatest fears, other than, actually dying, is not telling the stories that I want to tell during my life. I have so many stories in my mind that I just haven't put on paper yet. And then even the ones that I have written down just don't look the way that I want them to look before I show them to the world. And that's really scary. In fact, it's so scary that initially I want to read multiple Hemingway stories to really get a feel for his writing style and kind of try to write like him, but I've decided after reading the story that I really just want to write. It just feels fitting to read that story and then try to create work while I still can. Seriously, I highly recommend you read The Snows of Kilimanjaro the next time you get writer's block. If that story won't give you writing motivation, nothing will. So the final step of this video is to try to write like Hemingway, and to be honest, that's a pretty tough task. If I could write like Hemingway, I would already be a famous author. And I wouldn't be the author known for making memes about procrastinating writing. That being said, what I really want to do is kind of mimic his writing habits and also kind of try to take one or two things from his writing style and pull it into my own writing. In terms of habits, Ernest Hemingway had some interesting habits. As I covered in the beginning of this video, he did not say write drunk, edit sober. He never wrote drunk. I am already drunk. Rather, he would actually write early in the morning when his mind was the most focused. Because I started filming this video at 3 a.m., it's technically early in the morning right now. It's 7:35 to be exact. For the record, this is like the third time in my life that I've drank this early. The other two times were both SantaCon. Anyway, Hemingway would like to write early in the morning when his mind was fresh, and he would only write a few hundred words before he stopped. His thought process was after those first few hundred words, he would start to lose traction. To be honest, I really agree with his thought process. While in the past I've loved to write late at night, I've noticed I actually write my best in the morning. My only problem with Ernest Hemingway's habits is he liked to write standing up. Who the hell likes to write standing up? But I guess for the sake of research, I'll try it and let you know how I feel about it. Why couldn't he like writing in bed? The writing standing up is a total no for me. I'm totally down to be writing this early in the morning, but do it in bed. But yeah, I understand that I'm pretty plastered and it is 8 a.m., but the whole writing standing up thing just isn't for me. Like, I'm actually really into like doing work standing up. Like, I've done that before, but it doesn't work for writing. Like, you know what? Out of all the crazy things Hemingway's done, I think the standing up while writing in the morning is probably the craziest thing he's done. I'm standing by that. That's the craziest thing he's done. Not the attacking lions or like all the other stuff he's done with... Yeah, the craziest thing he's done is definitely writing in the morning, standing up. Standing by that. Okay, on further thought, maybe thinking the thing to flush the toilet was the thing hanging from the ceiling is the craziest thing he's done, but the writing standing up is definitely second place. As for what I actually wrote during that standing up session, it's absolute garbage. And to be honest, I feel like me being drunk and it being 8 a.m. has nothing to do with that. I tried to incorporate a little bit of Hemingway's style into what I wrote, but it didn't really work at all. But I tried to incorporate the fact that he likes to start with dialogue. And when he writes, he seems to be really comfortable going straight into just straight dialogue, just dialogue after dialogue after dialogue. I personally don't really feel comfortable with that because I kind of get confused when I read that, so I kind of like to add like a little context. So I did kind of chicken out and do dialogue, then context, and dialogue. I know maybe I could be a little biased, but I don't think me being drunk or trying to copy Hemingway or anything like that, not that I'm copying him, but like trying to embody him, has anything to do with why this story sucks. Before I read it, and note, the only reason I'm reading it is in this series, I want to read what I write at the end of the series as the end of the video every single time, because otherwise I totally wouldn't read this crap out loud. But the reason I feel like this is bad, I think, has nothing to do with all the drinks I drank during this night, during the morning. I think it just has to do with the fact that I don't know where to start the story. In fact, I don't really know what the story is yet. For a submission call, I've been trying to write a steampunk murder mystery, and that's really all I've gotten. Like, I really have nothing else for this story except the prompt. And it's not like I wasn't interested in the call when I saw it. Like, I picked it out of like 32 other options. I find it very interesting. It's like a novella that's steampunk and also a murder mystery. I just can't think of like a general plot, and as a result, like everything I write is just like side nonsense. And I thought that maybe the inspiration I got from the Snows of Kilimanjaro would really inspire me to kind of try to start this story, but it didn't. Stop barking, Loki. Stop barking. Stop barking. Stop barking. Here we go. She knows I'm up. I bet my dad can't even hear me, but she knows I'm up. She wants me to go down there and say hello. I'm not saying hello. Shh. He doesn't know. He can't hear me. That's so crazy. She can hear me up here talking, and he can't hear me. Am I gonna lose my hearing like that? I feel like I'm being somewhat loud. Anyway, for the sake of keeping this series consistent, I'm gonna read what I wrote for this, but just know it's awful. What a crazy night, Brian said, finally sitting up from the floor of the president's suite aboard the Orion. Although he'd clearly been in the suite when he fell asleep, he had felt as if he was looking upon it for the first time. Quiet down, a voice said. It belongs to Captain Weathers of the Orion. If his head were not pounding from the night before, Brian may have been a bit more concerned when he looked towards the voice and saw it was the captain with his eyes shut, buried under one of the couch's velvet pillows. Clearly the captain was not guiding the Orion, but the great airship continued to soar through the sky. Brian could tell from its slight sway back and forth, from the slight gust of wind that pushed against it, that the ship was still airborne. That was a good thing. Unfortunately, that was really all Brian had going for him. To be honest, this section here is probably doomed for my writer graveyard, and that's not just the liquor talking. Definitely let me know what author you think I should cover next, or if you think there's a way I can improve this series, also let me know about that. I'm so trashed right now, it's not even funny. This was fun. I'm gonna go play Civilization until I sober up to the point that my parents don't know I was drinking until like 8 a.m. Thank you so much for watching. See you next episode.